I made a mistake, a big mistake, continuing to defend Joe Manchin after all of you told me what a fool I was being. I said, what about the Biden judges he voted for? That counts. And he's with us on healthcare and he wants to reduce drug prices. It's just that he represents a coal state. We have to understand. This is what I argued to anyone who called Manchin a stone-faced weasel and labeled him the primary obstacle to President Biden's ambitious climate goals within his Build Back Better agenda. No, I've been a sucker. There is no point in defending Joe Manchin anymore because Joe Manchin is simply not acting in the interest of either the Biden administration or the American people. Set aside that he drives past the homes of the over 200,000 poverty-bound West Virginians in a silver Maserati. Ignore the fact that he lives aboard a cushy houseboat. The truth is that no matter how much he claims on call-in radio shows that he's simply holding out for an honorable deal, Joe Manchin will never work with President Biden. He will never work with leader Chuck Schumer or any other Democrat to advance climate reform because it will undermine his own source of personal wealth. Here it comes. Joe Manchin is the founder of a company called EnerSystems, and EnerSystems gathers up coal waste. They pull it out of mud and slate, and it's commonly referred to as gob. And it's usually cast aside by mining companies, but it can also be used to generate electricity. Now, gob is far less efficient than regular coal, and about twice as much of it is needed to generate the same amount of electricity. You can think of gob as the 2 or 3 tea bags you already used and threw them away, but you're out of tea bags, so you just go through, I can get one more use out of them. That's gob. Now, because gob is so inefficient, transporting it only makes sense when the cost is low, meaning it's never usually hauled far from where it's found, and that's where Joe Manchin's company, EnerSystems, comes in. His company is responsible for selling and trucking the gob for profit to a nearby power plant in Granttown, West Virginia, one of only a handful left in the US that still burns gob to generate power. Now, during his time in the Senate, Joe Manchin has earned over $5 million from EnerSystems and the gob. Not included in that is the cut he also gets from the Granttown plant for the privilege they have of burning his inefficient, high-priced coal slop. And it gets worse. Once the gob is burned, it leaves behind toxic ash, and Manchin's company then goes back and carts away that ash and dumps it. That leftover ash contains high levels of contaminants that can damage internal organs if inhaled and can leach into local drinking water. So Joe Manchin literally makes money screwing the environment both coming and going. While President Biden takes the hits at the national level for failing on his climate agenda, and yes, he has failed on his climate agenda, Manchin claims he's only thinking of the little guy when refusing to sign on to any version of legislation that Schumer has brought him. Manchin explained on a local radio talk show that his reason this time for turning his back on the environment was inflation. But I think at this point, it's safe to say that if those numbers do go down next month, Manchin will just find another reason to drag his Prada loafers. The legislation was written in blue ink this time. The moon is entering Pisces. That last season of This Is Us sucked. How can I possibly support the environment right now? But what should worry us the most are the number of young voters and climate activists in this country, because they are wrongly focusing all of their wrath at Joe Biden, and they're considering skipping the midterms entirely. They apparently have no awareness of the crippling effect that Manchin and Manchin alone is having on the entire agenda of the party, including everything that they want. Now, last week in the New York Times, there was an article headlined, "Young Voters Are Fed Up with Their Much Older Leaders." And it came with a parade of quotes from crushed 20-somethings who see Biden as ineffective at best and a liar at worst. But nowhere in the article do any of these young voters name any candidate that they believe apparently has the magic touch needed to win over Joe Manchin, which they'll still need to do if Biden wasn't around. There's no acknowledgement of Manchin's refusal to do anything about the filibuster in what is currently an evenly split Senate. And none of them mention what a singular derailing force Manchin has been to the very goals that they're hoping to see Joe Biden achieve, that we're all hoping to see Joe Biden achieve. So I was the sucker. I was the sucker for hoping Joe Manchin was a man of some kind of integrity. I do hope, however, when I'm confronted by a wide-eyed first-time voter, much like I was 20 years ago when Bill Clinton was saying he was going to let gays serve openly in the military and then wound up with don't ask, don't tell. But I'm hoping if I come across one of those voters that I have the patience and the dignity to honor their frustration, which is valid, but at the same time, talk them through what we need to make their climate dreams a reality. And what that is more Democrats in the Senate and the House. And that means they have got to show up to vote for their needs as well as everybody else's. We Democrats collectively have got to show up in November to make Joe Manchin exactly what he deserves to be in American politics, and that is irrelevant. We need to remind those young voters what happens when a politician of overwhelming self-interest and scant goodwill is entrusted with a colossal amount of power, as if the years 2016 through 2020 weren't enough to make that point for us. Without that, we should all expect that the planet will continue to cook, while Joe Manchin continues to polish his Maserati and pass off his feeble excuses as truth. But I know the real truth now, and that is this. Joe Manchin cannot be trusted. Joe Manchin cannot close a deal. And if we add just 2 more Democratic senators this November to the 50 we already have, none of us will ever have to hear from Joe Manchin again. For more Manchin bashing, check me out at YouCantBeatBlue.com, and please subscribe to me on YouTube at YouCantBeatBlue, and you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit.